Hi my lovely creatives. In today's video I'm going to share a piece of bad art with you. This is a watercolor painting that I made earlier and I'm really unhappy with it. I sort of feel that there is some parts of the painting that I quite like. Sometimes taking a bit of distance from your painting helps. But in general this is not the type of art that I would like to make at this stage. And I'm going to take you through the process anyway and tell you exactly why I'm unhappy with it. I know that sort of bad art is a very subjective thing. Maybe a lot of people would find this really good art. Maybe there's other people who look at pieces that I'm really proud of and think it is terrible. That is absolutely fine. The reason I call this bad art is because there's many points throughout the process where I wish I made different decisions. The outcome is not quite what I hoped for. The style is not quite my style. It just doesn't quite feel right. This was a little bit scary for me to film because, you know, people like to share things that they are proud of. But I felt like I could learn from this process and maybe you can learn from it as well. So we're going to go through the process of painting this portrait. I'll share it with you in a moment. We're going to go through this process step by step and I'll tell you exactly what I did wrong in my opinion, how I can do things different and what I can learn from it. Stay tuned, I'm going to turn my camera around and show you exactly what process I went through. So let's get started at the beginning and look at the sketch first. At this stage I was still really hopeful. I had found a reference picture that I liked, I decided I wanted to make a watercolor painting and I just made a lovely composition with that flower in the corner and I wanted my desk to look nice for filming. So I'm just taping my paper to the table. I'm using 300 GSM Bockingford watercolor paper and I'm ready to get started on this new painting. I'm starting my sketch with a red pencil and this I wouldn't change. I'm quite happy the way I set up the sketch. I started really light and here you can see I'm starting to make my sketch a little bit darker just to make it a little bit clearer to see what I'm doing. I cut out the really light part of the sketch because it is so light that you would just be looking at a white paper on camera. But I'm making this sketch and I do feel like I could have been a bit more precise here, but in general I would still do this the same. The first mistake that I made is that I challenged myself on a lot of different aspects at the same time. So I decided to make a portrait, include a hand in that portrait, which is always quite challenging, and use a painting technique that I have not used for a while. By using negative painting I wanted to add flowers to the background and this is something that I've not done for a while, so that is a challenge in itself as well. So you can see I sketch out a little bit of the flowers as well, just to get a really rough idea. So I think when you're doing something that is challenging, pick one challenge at a time. Make a mental note, Irene. You don't always have to challenge yourself on so many different points at the same time. So you can see I'm making my sketch a little bit darker. And I'm quite used to painting portraits, but it's been a while. And I was also not very warm yet today. I usually find that once I have done a little bit of painting or drawing, it becomes easier. You warm up and the painting process becomes easier. So I started this process cold, went straight in there, picked a really challenging subject and challenging materials, and I just went straight in there. So that's the first group of mistakes that I made before I even started with my painting. The second group of mistakes that I made is that here one, I placed the red colors in the wrong places. So the red zones of the face are around the nose and the eyes, but I made this way too prominent and I should have started much more careful and much lighter. So you can see I'm blending this out a little bit, but I should have been much more careful in my color choices when I started. The yellow as well is just way too vibrant. And another mistake that I made here is that I did not think about my color choices before I got started. I just went straight in there with the colors I had on my palette, not thinking about the
sort of general composition that I wanted to achieve at the end. It would have been better to just take a step back, think about what colors I wanted to use, what composition I wanted to go for, maybe make a little sketch on like a little thumbnail first and decide what colors I was going to place where and where the lighting is coming from. So at this stage I did not have a clear plan or a clear idea of what I wanted the final to look like, and I was just winging it. And I think winging it can be a really fun way of painting. It can be really liberating, but when you pick a challenging subject like a portrait, um, and a hand as well, which can be quite tricky, plus doing a background in a way that you've not done for a while, and not knowing what colors you're going to go for, all of it just became a bit too much. So it becomes a bit chaotic. So you can see I'm starting to add some purple to the hair. And now I'm looking at this, I actually think that the yellow and purple go together really well. I just wish I had stopped there. The paint that I'm using is quite granulated, so you can see the effects on the paper are quite lovely. I think this paper invites granulation as well, which is something that I really enjoy. It's something that I love, a bit of texture in my artworks. And yeah, I think that's quite a lot of fun. So at this stage, I feel like the painting is coming together a little bit, but I definitely work without a plan, which is one of the biggest mistakes I made on this artwork. I took quite a lot of time in between for things to dry today, which is a good thing. But at this stage the yellow and the purple are still really wet and they blend in together. And I think that warm color, that tone of the mix between yellow and purple, they go together really well. But what am I doing here with this really bright orange color? I don't know if this picture really needed that extra bit of bright color. It was already super bright. I think I should have just picked a main color, a main pop of color, and then keep it a bit more neutral otherwise. I'm going a little bit of color crazy today. So I'm going around these flowers, adding some of this orange color to the cheeks as well, adding a bit more warmth to the face. And I'm using quite a large brush. All of this is a little bit whatever the opposite of precise is, with a large brush literally. So I'm adding some splashes of color to the background, and I'm really trying to achieve a loose painting effect here. And I actually think that this softness, this face where the shadows are not quite right and the colors are not quite there yet, has a little bit of an 1920s sort of poster effect. So if she had a slightly different haircut, the look would be like an advertising poster, which I think could be quite fun, but that's not where I'm staying. I'm adding in some shadows on her face, and I do think the shadows help giving it a bit of shape, but the shadow on the nose it's not quite the right shape, so her the shape of her nose is not quite right. It's a bit difficult to explain exactly what is wrong about it, but the shadow is giving the nose a shape that is not quite the right shape. I should have spotted that, but unfortunately I did not, and I let it dry, and then it was difficult to correct because that line is quite harsh. Also the eyes are looking in slightly different directions. I was just a bit rushed in this painting, I think. I did not take time to pause for a moment and just see what was happening. So both of our eyes are looking in a slightly different direction, which is also something that if I spent a little bit more time on my sketch, a little bit more time planning and just taking a break once in a while, I could have solved that. So you can see everything is dry. It became very light. So even at this stage I could have solved it. And I think I realized that the eyes weren't quite right. So with a small brush I'm going in and adding in a little bit of detail. But it still feels a little bit rushed. I think the main thing that I'm missing is overall direction on this painting. A bit of a plan of where to go. What look I wanted to go for as well. So I'm adding some shadows in the hair and around the face to add a little bit more depth. And I do like these thinner strands of hair. I think they came out quite nice. Those lines on the nose are just way too dark. And again, I should have just taken a moment, let things dry, just be more patient in general. Patience is not my strong suit. I often rush my paintings a little bit. So I also start to think about the look of my painting a little bit now. And I want to go with quite a dark background. And I remember thinking this at a time that I wanted to go for quite a dark background with these flowers being lighter. So I'm making the shadows on the face quite a bit darker. It's almost a bit like sculpting. And I'm using a lot of purples for the shadows, which is one of my favorite colors for shadows. So that's something I would do again. But I would plan this out just a little bit more. Because at the moment this painting is both overworked as well as not thought through very well enough. Oh, this lipstick color is just awful. I really should have picked a different color for the warm tones in this face. It looks like she's playing with someone else's makeup. But I'm not giving up, I'm letting it dry, adding in some flower shapes here in the background and mixing up some really dark blue. This is one of my favorite colors. And I'm going in straight over my painting. It's all very dry, so I've let it dry overnight. And I'm using this technique called negative painting, which means that I add in the shapes in between the objects that I'm painting and making them darker. So negative painting often has a lot of layers. It works really beautiful in monochromatic colors. I'll definitely film a tutorial about it at some point. But at this stage, it looks like she's sitting in front of a plastic sheet with holes in it. I don't know what I'm doing. It's this weird sort of abstract effect at the moment. Doesn't look like flowers at all. Also, her body is completely lost. When I started, there was a shoulder, and you could see the rest of her physique. That is completely lost in the painting. I completely forgot about it. And I'm just filling it up with lots of flowers. And although I'm really enjoying this really wet painting and the textures that I'm creating with it, I will zoom in a little bit more later on to show you. It is not quite the look that I'm going for. So I'm adding in some black with my blues and just making some really dark marks. And another mistake that I sort of pointed out a little bit already is that I forgot to decide where the light is going to come from. And whenever you paint a portrait, I would recommend to decide early on or before you get started what direction the light is going to come from. Because it's such an important component of any portrait. Where the shadows are on the face. I looked at this reference photo in the beginning, but I changed that and I just went a little bit rogue with it. And here I'm adding more shadows to the face. And although I'm actually quite liking it at this stage. I'm giving the face some really harsh shadows, and I feel like this was quite a bold move. But then I doubted myself and started to blend it out again, and it makes the picture really muddy. The colors underneath start to mix up with that shadow, and it just gives her a grey face. So whilst I quite liked the bold shadow that I added, I started to doubt myself and started to try and take it away. So this is something I usually cut out, but I dried my picture with a hairdryer. So until it was completely dry. I'm still not giving up on this painting. And I'm going in there with even more dark blue. And at this stage I start to realize that this is not going to be a masterpiece painting. And I decide just to practice my negative painting. So you can see here that extra layer of shapes brings that negative painting technique together a little bit. And I know this picture is just really chaotic with lots of different shapes and different things going on. It's hard to know where to draw your attention to. I'm just trying to add stuff everywhere. But at this stage, I just want to learn and have fun with it. Which is quite a nice place to be in. Once you know your picture is sort of ruined, you can use it to practice, right? I wonder if any of you have ever experienced this. So I'm making some darker marks just to increase the contrast in the picture. I felt like that the piece of hair now on the left hand side doesn't look like hair anymore. I have utterly ruined that with this shadow, and it's really hard to tell that this is actually part of her haircut. This is another desperate move of adding some interest to the painting by adding some loose splashes of paint. And again, I'm going to dry it. There we go. I'm now going in with some white gouache to add some highlights to the painting. And this is not salvaging what I've done, but it does give a little bit of a sparkle to the eye, a little bit of shine to this, to the lips, to the lipstick. Add some nails in, some highlights. Just having fun with it at this stage. White gouache can be a little bit addictive. I added in quite a lot today. So the main things that I did wrong in my opinion is bad planning, not decided on what color scheme I wanted to go for, just going a bit rogue with the colors and just generally not thinking about what I was doing enough, being a little bit rushed and just being insecure as well. Like here, for example, why did I wipe out that white and make this white mess on her forehead? At the end of this video, I will share you the things that I do like about this picture. Because there's a few things that I've learned from it that I do really like and that I'm going to use again in future paintings. It's not all bad, I've definitely learned from it. But this is not going to be in my shop. I'm not going to sell this. And if someone really wants to buy it, you're welcome to make an offer. But now, just all kidding aside, this is definitely a practice piece, something that I have used to learn from. more than anything, which I think is really important. If you don't allow yourself to make bad art, how are you going to grow as an artist and how are you going to learn? And sometimes you have to put yourself out of your comfort zone and practice and learn just to get better and also to grow as an artist. I have been doing lots of landscape painting recently and also color pencil drawing, and that's such a different technique from watercolor portraits. I feel like I should have practiced a few simple portraits first before I dove into this really complicated, busy composition that I am attempting today. I think it's just way too busy. I should have picked one thing, instead of trying to add 10 things to the picture. But it's okay, I really enjoyed making it, and I'm going to take away the tape now. And then I'll show you the things that I really liked about this picture that I'm going to keep for the future. The first thing that I liked that I'm going to try and do again is a portrait with the negative painting technique on the background. I just need to plan it better, decide what sort of flowers I'm going to add and how it's going to work together in the composition. The second thing that I really like is the granulated effect of the paint. I feel like some of the paint layers so beautifully and you can see all these layers underneath shine through, and that's something that I really enjoy and something that I want to use going forward as well. The hand looks a bit like a glove, but I think with a bit of practice I could use the same pose for a different picture again. Overall, I feel like I've learned a lot from making this picture, and I hope you learned along with me on this journey. Not every picture has to come out great. It's fine to make mistakes. It's part of the journey of an artist. And the fact that I'm sharing this and that I'm a little bit nervous about sharing this is okay. Not everything has to be perfect. I think perfection is overrated and dangerous even. So thank you so much for being with me here today. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think underneath and if you've made any pieces of art that you really struggled with in the past. And make sure you subscribe to my channel. The next video is going to be a normal tutorial again. So make sure you sign up and ring that little bell so you get notified when the video is ready. And I'll see you around soon. Bye bye.